Right, hello everyone and welcome back to Kate's Comics. Today I've got my top 10 favourite fight scenes from all of comics that I've read. I just wanted to kind of make this video to make something a bit different and to also just put out there my top 10 favourite fight scenes of all time. This is just my personal opinion, so if you have a favourite fight scene that's not on here, then leave it down in the comments below, let me know. It might be from a book I haven't read, so I'm always happy to hear them, and yeah, leave them in the comments below. So, without further ado, let's just get into it, shall we? Just a quick warning that this video will contain spoilers for the following comics. So, coming in at number 10, I've got Spencer and Locke 2, Locke vs Roach Riley. Throughout Spencer and Locke 2, you have Roach Riley, who's a character who suffers from PTSD after being in the war, but is enacting sort of his revenge. He sees it on the town and on the city, and yeah, he's like killing all these people, and he's like driving tanks through the city, and he's just like a villain through and through. The one fight scene in particular that I'm talking about today is from the end of Spencer and Locke 2, after Locke beats him and walks away. You know, he's got his daughter in front of him and he walks away, but then Spencer kind of snaps and takes over Locke's body almost and just kills Roach Riley. And reading that, you know, it sets up a Spencer and Locke 3 that I hope we get really, really soon. But like reading it, I was kind of shocked when that happened because I wasn't expecting Spencer to be able to take over Locke's body and to kill Roach Riley. So yeah, it was really kind of interesting to see, and it was much more than just a punch and a brawl. So yeah, that's why that made my number 10 spot. Then coming in at number 9, from Robert Kirkman's Outcast, we have Kyle and the Outcasts versus the Merge. Now this is kind of the big culmination of the series. This is the big end fight scene that we've been looking for. You have Kyle and all of his outcasts living on the farm together, and the Merge show up. They think they're going to be able to take him over, but they don't realise that their presence being there gives Kyle and the rest of the outcasts more power. So they form this spiral, and like, it's so incredible to read. Like, I was reading it, and I think I read the last 3 all in one sitting, the last 3 books. I properly binged it, so it was so cool to see. You know, you have that amazing scene of all their eyes lighting up, and Paul Aceita's art throughout that series, it's incredible. And that in particular, with the lightning, it reminded me of Thor Ragnarok. I don't know why, I think it's just the lightning, and it just like, yeah, it gave me chills reading it. I was so hyped reading it and excited, and yeah, that's why that makes my number 9. So then, coming in at number 8, we have from Civil War, Captain America vs Iron Man. I mean, what more do I have to say? It's Captain America vs Iron Man. They had an amazing film about it, but the book is so different. You have people like the Fourth Clone, you have Peter Parker revealing his identity as Spider-Man, which is something Iron Man kind of gets him to do. And just, yeah, the fights and the whole story of Civil War between Captain America and Iron Man is so good, the comic and the film, but they're so different. Like, I'm trying to not talk about the film because I'm just focusing on the comic. I haven't read the comic for a while, but I do remember it being my favourite fight scene at the time when I did read it. I read it before the Civil War film came out. But yeah, I just remember reading it and just kind of, I read that's another one. I think all of these I've read in one sitting, but yeah, that was another one that just kind of blew me away. I don't really have to talk too much about Civil War because everyone probably knows the story already. Then, coming in at number 7, we have from Invincible vs Angstrom Levy in issue 33. Now, Invincible is a series, it's a video I could have done all in itself, the top 10 Invincible fight scenes. And if that is a video you're interested in, then check out my buddy Mad Dog Comics. He did a great video, I think the top 15 or 20 fight scenes in Invincible, and yeah, it's a great watch. So I'll put it up on screen, I'll link it down below. Go check that out. Anyway, so Invincible versus Angstrom Levy. Now this is the first time we see the 2 fight in issue 33, and it's such an amazing fight scene because you have Mark Grayson going through all these portals that Angstrom Levy is kind of throwing at him, and he doesn't really know what's going on. He goes to like other dimensions, like you get dinosaurs, you get the Marvel dimension, you get the DC dimension, you get what looks like a Mad Max dimension, a Walking Dead dimension, all these little kind of Easter eggs that are really cool whilst this intense fight scene's going on. You know, Nolan's left after the big fight, Debbie and Oliver are being held captive by Angstrom Levy, and there's nothing really Mark can do because every time he tries to attack him he's getting thrown through these portals. So it's really cool to see that. It's the first kind of time I've ever seen an interdimensional fight scene in a comic. So that's why that makes my NumberSeven. Yeah, it's just so impressive and so well done. And the end to that fight scene, when Mark thinks he's stranded in another dimension after beating Angstrom Levy to death, it's the first time you see Mark really let go and unleash his Viltrumite rage. And so yeah, the panel where he's just like over Angstrom Levy, breathing, and he's just like, I thought you were stronger. That will always stick with me, and it's something I'll always remember. It's so good, yeah. Then coming in at number 6, we have Wolverine, Old Man Logan, and we have Old Man Logan versus the Red Skull in particular from chapter 7 of the trade. Now this is a book I actually read last night, so this is really fresh in my head. And there's 3 main fights in Old Man Logan that I could have mentioned, I could have picked. You know, I had Wolverine versus the X-Men, Wolverine versus the Hulklings, or the Hulks, like the gang, and Old Man Logan versus the Red Skull. But I chose to go with Old Man Logan versus the Red Skull in particular, because you see Red Skull as this evil president that has like congregated all of the villains in the world and managed to kill every single last hero. And he's taken over as president of the United States. He's got his own quarter of the country. And it's a character that I would never have expected that. I would never have expected Red Skull of all characters to have been that evil. And when you see him wearing Captain America's costume, I mean, he's got all of his trophies in the case. He's got like Spider-Man's mask, he's got Captain America's shield. I think he might have Mjolnir, but I know Mjolnir is in Hammer Falls because that's why it's called Hammer Falls. So maybe he's got a fake Mjolnir. I don't know. Anyway, and yeah, you get this incredible fight scene because Logan has already gone through so much, and we've just found out what it was. You know, he was tricked by Mysterio to kill his entire family, to kill all of the X-Men, and that was so nearly on my list on here. But I chose to go with this one because how that implicates this, and also Hawkeye's just died, so you have Hawkeye going with Logan all the way through the series, and then Hawkeye gets shot in the head, and the two of them both get shot, and they get brought to the Red Skull, and yeah, he thinks they're both dead, and then Logan wakes up, and Logan's, you know, not popped his claws out or fought or whatever, and he doesn't in this fight. He doesn't need to get his claws out, but there's such a good bit where Red Skull brings this sword down on him and he gets Captain America's shield and then fucking decapitates him with it. Watch it, like, oh my god, that is, like I said for Invincible, that's another panel that will always stick with me, is Wolverine decapitating the Red Skull with Captain America's shield. Yeah, that's why that makes my number 6. Okay, so then we're into the top 5, and at number 5 I have, from the Spider-Man series, Spider-Man vs. Vermin in Kraven's Last Hunt, and specifically Kraven's Last Hunt Part 6. So I know what you're thinking, Vermin, like, is a character, why is he on this list and why is he so high? Why is Vermin at number 5 when I had like Wolverine versus Red Skull at number 6 and Invincible and Angstrom Levy even lower than that? So, Kraven's Last Hunt, this, as I said, is specifically Part 6, but if you look at everything that came before it, much like in Old Man Logan, you have Peter Parker being defeated by Kraven, you have Kraven taking up the mantle of Spider-Man, then you have Peter losing a fight to Vermin because he's just come back from being buried, and Kraven has to save him. He has to save his life, Kraven, and then kind of accepts that what he's done and he's reached his peak, and you know he can't go any further, so he just ends his life. And he's won, like Kraven's won. Peter Parker knows that, Spider-Man knows that. And then in this fight scene, he has to go and fight Vermin in the sewers. Kraven's now dead, so Kraven can't help him if he needs him. And Spider-Man's still dealing with the PTSD of being buried. There's a great like panel in this where he's fighting him and he gets pushed under the water, and all the time he's thinking back to crawling out of the grave, and he's just like, I'm not dead. And just, yeah, that fight scene between Spider-Man and Vermin, I must have read it 3 or 4 times when I was reading the book. So yeah, I read it again, because it's so good. They're fighting in the sewers, and it's Vermin, like a character I'd never heard of before. It's you know, it's a character I don't think many people will have even heard of. So for him to make it so high on the list, I mean, it's mostly because of everything that came before with Kraven, but just the implications and the kind of consequences of that. The fight scene that they have is so impactful, it means so much, and there's so much tension in it because of that. Spider-Man's already lost to this character once. He's previously had to get help from Captain America to beat him. And now Kraven, who's won, is dead, and so he can't get any help from him. So yeah, Spider-Man's PTSD fighting Vermin. That's my pick for number 5. Then coming in at number 4, another Spider-Man fight scene. This is from JMS's Amazing Spider-Man. So J. Michael Straczynski wrote Spider-Man vs. Morlun in issue 32 through 35. This was a fight scene that when I read, like all of these others, I could not put down, and it's a fight scene I reread when I read it, because Morlun, like Vermin, was a character I'd not really read much of before. It was a character I hadn't read anything of before. But to see that fight scene and to see how Ezekiel offers Spider-Man refuge in his kind of safe room and Spider-Man doesn't take it, and then you get the fight scene with Morlun where he's just not giving up, he's just coming after him all the time, and I can't remember how long they fight for, but it's something like 48 hours straight or something like that, because Morlun doesn't tire, and yeah, he's just coming after him straight away. Spider-Man's costume gets more and more ripped, and there's a point in it he calls Aunt May and tells her that he loves her, because he thinks he's gonna die. Like, he thinks he is not gonna make it out of this fight. And just for that, for the unrelentingness, the like Terminator nature of Morlun, that's why that's number 4 for me, because yeah, it's so impressive to see that they fought for all that time. And also it leads to the end where Spider-Man passes out on his bed and Aunt May finds out that he's Spider-Man. She finds him in the costume with all the rips, all the bruises, all the cuts, all the bandages, and she finds out he's Spider-Man, and that would have never happened if Morlun hadn't fought Spider-Man for like however long. But yeah, just reading it and reading the bit where he calls Aunt May and he's like, I love you and I might not make it, it's just, oh, it's so good. Alright, then into the top 3. So, number 3, and this is a character that I'm surprised hasn't made an appearance before on the list. This is Batman, and specifically Batman vs. the Joker from the New 52 Endgame. So it's issue, I think 40. I think 40 is Endgame, because then there was 12 issues afterwards. Anyway, so it's Batman vs. the Joker in Endgame, and I was 12 or 13 when I read this, and I haven't really read it since, so I'm looking forward to doing a retrospective. But I remember at the time how brutal this fight scene is, how brutal Scott Snyder's run is in general, and if you want to know more about Scott Snyder, check out my Beyond the Page. I remember how brutal that writing is, I remember how brutal Greg Capullo's artwork is, and I just remember the scene where Joker's like leaping over him, and he puts the 2 knives in him and then like cuts his back, so Batman has a big smile on his back. I remember Joker throws a card and it goes through Batman's eye, and yeah, they fight, and then the whole time Joker is saying like he wants Batman to kill him because he never will, and the cave ends up collapsing on them and they're both thought to be dead. And as a 12-year-old reading that was my introduction to Batman and the Joker, so it has a really kind of special place in my heart. Like, I talk about how brutal it is, but it's special to me because that was the series and that was the fight and the book in particular that really made me love the Joker as a character. I mean, I already loved Batman as a character, but that Death of the Family, like, I loved. And yeah, that fight scene in general, like that fight is just so good. It sticks with me because it's so brutal and they both pretty much die in it. Obviously, you know, they don't. No one's ever really gone. But like, they do. So yeah. Okay, then we have the top 2. And if you've watched my review series, then you'll know why I like this one so much. Number 2, this is Preacher, and it's Jesse versus Cassidy in issue 65. So as I say, if you've watched my review, you'll know why I love this so much. So Jesse and Cassidy, like, they start off the series as friends, then everything happens, Jesse gets thrown out of the plane, Cassidy kind of makes Tulip's life a living hell, you know, he just keeps her in the hotel room, doesn't really let her out. Jesse finds everything that Cassidy did to all the other women, how abusive he was, and like, how much he can ruin people's lives, and this fight scene is just awesome because Jesse tells Cassidy before they have the fight that he's gonna take him out the back and beat the shit out of him, and then he tells him to fight like hell, and he uses the word of God on him, and it's just awesome because they have this fight scene and Jesse walks straight up to him at the start and just says, take off your glasses, and Cassidy's like, whoa, hold on a second, and just punches him square across the face. Steve Dillon's art in that, the fight is, again, it's another brutal one, but the fight is so good, and Garth Ennis's writing for it is so good. It's really, really amazing, and I talked about it a lot in my review, so I'm going to probably just rehash what I talked about in that, but yeah, I'll leave the link to that as well. Awesome fight scene. So good. It's such a good culmination of everything that came before it. I mean, all the while you have parallels with Tulip taking down the Grail, and yeah, Jesse and Cassidy just slugging it out. One of my favourite parts in Preacher is when Cassidy goes to punch Jesse in the hallway, and Jesse catches his hand and tells him to leave, and then goes in the house and he's like, I broke every bone in my hand. That's my favourite part of the series, and yeah, just this is a follow-on from that, so that's why I love it so much. Okay, and then before number 1, I'm going to just mention some honourable mentions. Another Invincible fight, we have Mark versus Thrag on the sun. And talk about comic fights. 2 characters fighting on the sun. It doesn't get more comic than that. Like, it doesn't get more comic book than that. Mark versus the big bad Viltrumite Thrag fighting on the sun. Like, I don't know what else I can say about it. It's awesome, and all the while Mark has this inner monologue going on that's like, if they could hear me I'd say this, and he's just thinking all the while. Yeah, it's awesome. And then another Batman one, we have Batman versus Talon from the Court of Owls. As I say, I was like 12, 13 when I read this, and I just remember the Court of Owls storyline being amazing, and the fight between Batman and Talon being amazing, and yeah. Then another honourable mention, another one from Preacher, the Saint of Killers versus the Grail. All these bodies are stacking up, and it makes you scared of the Saint of Killers so much, because he's this unstoppable force, like Morlun was in the Spider-Man fight scene, but he's just killing all these people, mowing them down. It's so good. My 4th honourable mention is from Chip Zdarsky's Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man. It's Spider-Man versus the Vidomi. So the Vidomi are an alien race that come from planet to planet looking for AI. And in the story, it leads Spider-Man, J. Jonah Jameson, and his half-sister, half-sister, to go back in time and join forces with another Spider-Man to take them down. I mean, what's more amazing than Spider-Man and J. Jonah Jameson teaming up, J. Jonah Jameson knowing Spider-Man's identity and going back in time, and also like you meet another version of Spider-Man that has given up his powers and become like a millionaire, billionaire, and it's just so cool. And then finally, my last honourable mention is from DC versus Marvel Comics, Captain America versus Bane. What more do I have to say? It's Captain America versus Bane. There's a bit in it where Bane holds Captain America above his head like he does in Nightfall, the kind of famous shot of him holding Batman, and before he can break Captain America's back, Captain America hits him with the shield and like beats him, and it's only literally like a page, but that fight scene is incredible. It's so awesome because, I mean, it's Bane versus Captain America. I don't know how more I can kind of sell it, but yeah, it's so cool. My number 1 comic fight of all time is, and you can probably guess what this is, it's Invincible versus Conquest. From Invincible issues 61 through 64. I could have done a top 10 list for Invincible fights only, but this is my favourite fight scene of all time because so much happens in this, and it's so much underlying stuff as well. As I mentioned, Nolan's already gone. Angstrom Levy brings in all the other Invincibles that completely destroy the world, and everybody has tried to fight these other versions of Mark Grayson. You get incredible moments like Rexplode igniting his skeleton. You get just such cool stuff. Mark is the only one who can fight Conquest when he comes, and we find out straight away that Conquest is kind of this evil character that only enjoys killing, he only enjoys fighting. And the fight they have is brutal. It's so brutal. And talk about like panels sticking with you. The panel of Mark on top of Conquest with both of his arms broken and just headbutting him might be my favourite panel of all time. The fight is brutal. It takes place across pretty much the entire world. You know, they're flying across oceans and mountains, and all the while Mark, you know, he's trying to fight Conquest at first, then he realises how strong he is. People like Oliver and Eve come in and Mark instantly just tells them to get out because Conquest is going to kill Adam, Eve and Oliver straight away with no hesitation. So Mark is scared for them without kind of being scared for his own life. He's more scared for them. And so yeah, he's just like tells them to get out straight away. And it's incredible. It's so good. If you watch my Invincible Compendium 2 review, if you watch my Invincible Compendium 2 review, you'll know how much I loved it. So that was my top 10 list for my top 10 comic fights of all time, with 5 kind of honourable mentions. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the list, and as I said before, this is my personal choice. Obviously, if you've got something that wasn't on the list, leave it down in the comments below. Let me know down in the comments below, what's your favourite comic fight of all time? I might not have read it, or it might just not be on my list. So yeah, let me know. And if you did enjoy this video, please leave a like down below. Consider subscribing so you never miss another video. And share the video with your friends. It really helps out the channel, and it just kind of helps it grow and get out there a bit more. Yeah, if you did enjoy this format, let me know. I can always do another one, another top 10. Kind of 11 to 20 or just another top 10. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye.